Welcome to the Gulf Coast Growth Show. We've got a special guest with us today. My name is Chad Burke. I'm president of the Economic Alliance Houston Port Region. And with me today is good friend, Congressman Brian Babin, who represents this district and has for quite a while now. Congressman, it's great to have you in. I look forward to sitting down and chatting with you.
Thank you, Chad. And I appreciate your leadership here as well. And you're also, as I've told you many times, thank you for being a great landlord. This is where we have our district office here.
Well, we are very blessed to have the Congressman's district office in our building. And I would tell you, the benefits of that, the relationship and just the access to your staff down here and up in D.C., it's just been a great relationship. And it enhances the Economic Alliance's ability to represent this region as well. So we appreciate y'all being here.
Hey, you're a huge source of information, and really, quite frankly, we set our sails to a lot of the things that you tell us.
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, we appreciate it. And, today's a fun day. We actually, right before we jumped into the podcast, we came right out of our Public Policy Committee meeting. Congressman stuck his head in to say hi to everybody, just following up a big trip with about 40-something people up to D.C. a couple of weeks ago. So it's a great relationship, and our ability to kind of work with you to represent this region is just one of the most powerful things we have. So appreciate that.
Absolutely.
Really do.
Glad to have you up there.
Well, let's jump right in. I wanted to have this conversation because I want people to get to know you a little bit better and then understand the life of a congressman or woman. So I got some questions for you here.
Sure.
And first one is what originally, I mean, you have been a public servant a long time. We'll talk a little bit about your career in a second, but what originally inspired you to want to run for Congress and represent a unique region that goes from East Texas all the way down to NASA? But what inspired you to throw your hat in the ring for that?
Well, I always tell people, frankly, the same thing. I'm running, and I've run and I serve for 17 reasons. Those are my 17 grandchildren. That's right.
I knew that was coming.
My wife and I have been married for 53 years, and we have 5 children and 17 grandkids. And, we've been mightily blessed, like you and your family.
Yep.
We've been blessed greatly by our Heavenly Father, especially by our country. Mm-hmm. Our country is the freest, mightiest nation in the history of this planet.
Absolutely.
And the old thing called the American dream, we'll talk about it in a little bit, but I tell you what, it was getting a little dimmer the last 4 years. And then we'll talk about this too. It's now much brighter, but I wanted to make sure that my 17 grandkids would have the same opportunity for the American dream that our generation had and our parents' generation and on back.
Well, it's a powerful motivator. It really
Amen.
is. So we appreciate you jumping in there and doing that. I'd love to rehash it. So at some point, we ought to retell the story of how that very first primary went, because I was here. I remember that. We won't dive into that, but
it was interesting.
It was very interesting. And Congressman came out of East Texas with a lot of votes and carried the district. We're happy for it. So let me ask this. So before Congress, you had a very full career. I mean, full career before you became a congressman, including service in 2 different branches of the military. Am I right there?
That's right.
Air Force and the Army.
That's right.
Right. As a dentist as well. So give our viewers the quick thumbnail of all the things that you did prior to becoming a congressman and kind of
sure
filling out this amazing career you've had.
Well, I was born in Port Arthur, Texas, and we moved to Beaumont when I was about 5 years old. Actually, my dad was a World War II vet, and after World War II was over, I actually lived in one of the first federal housing projects in the state of Texas. It was called San Felipe Courts, better known later on as Allen Parkway Village. And so I lived there, and it was a tough neighborhood, but I'll tell you what, it was a good place for my dad. He was going to school at the time on the GI Bill, and then we moved back to Beaumont when I was probably 5 years old, and I was raised in Beaumont, Texas, and I know the smell of refineries and the smell of chemical plants. Well, I've worked in many of those coming up. as well as good duck hunting, good fishing, and lots of good sportsmen's operations going over there. So really, quite frankly, after I got out of school, and my first stint in school, quite frankly, wound up, I was on scholastic probation. I'm not going to lie. My mother wanted me to go off to school, so I went to the University of Texas, and I spent my 2 years up there. Did not do quite well academically. There was a war raging at that time, Vietnam. And so anyway, I wound up in the United States Army. That was the best thing probably ever happened to me. I needed some discipline, some order in my life. And quite frankly, I also met a young lady who I'm still married to after all these years.
She did. Her.
Yeah, my wife, Roxanne, the U.S. Army, Uncle Sam, and Jesus Christ. Yeah. That kind of centered me on where I'm supposed to be.
You didn't stand a chance with all that working out.
They were teamed up against me. But it was I had a great childhood. I was one of 7 kids. After I got out of the service, went back to school, and quite frankly, never didn't make below an A.
Yeah, and different maturity level.
Absolutely,
at that point in time.
That's right. So I tell you what, you got to give kids a second chance. And I had the second chance, and I was able to go back and finish my school and get all the way up through dental school.
Yeah, and then became a dentist.
I did. I became a dentist, and I actually went back in the military as an Air Force officer. Went from an enlisted guy in the Army to an Air Force officer. I spent 3 years overseas in Germany, and then came back and opened up a dental practice in Woodville, Texas. My dad wanted me to come back to Beaumont, but we wanted to live in the country, so we chose a small town in Tyler County, Texas. I practiced dentistry up there for over 35 years. And I was the mayor. I was on city council. I've always believed in giving back to my community, to my little town, to my county, East Texas. I also, while I was in the Air Force, was under President Jimmy Carter. And I was old enough and mature enough to see that he was a nice man, but I didn't like his leadership skills. And that turned me into a Republican, Chad. And when I got back, I went to East Texas, which was solid Democrat in those days.
Yeah, it was.
And I was opening my dental practice up, and I had people say, "Hey, Doc, man, you're going to hurt yourself being around with these, fooling around with these Republicans." But nevertheless, I said, "Well, I don't want to see a repeat of the 100+ embassy personnel that were kidnapped and captured as hostages by the Ayatollah Khomeini of the Iranian regime, and also at the same time, Carter was giving away the Panama Canal, and here they were. We could talk about that as well because that's still bubbling up really bad. That's a big issue. So I became the Tyler County chairman for Reagan and Bush, and that's how I got into politics.
That's for a lot of folks in politics, especially go back into the 70s and early 80s, to say that you worked on Ronald Reagan's first campaign that's a nice thing to hang on your wall there. That's pretty neat.
He was a good man.
Yeah. So amazing career that eventually led you to Washington, D.C. So give us a peek into that week in a life of a congressman. So you're back and forth. You got a place to stay up there. You got your family, and Roxanne probably traveling with you a lot of times. So you got committee meetings. You're meeting with constituents all week. Give us the quick thumbnail of what it's like to be a congressman for a week. What's that schedule look like?
It's a lot of travel, Chad. I mean, a ton of travel, and I spend probably 6-7 hours a week on an airplane. Traveling to and from Washington, D.C. A typical week, I'll fly up to Washington from Texas, from District, the 36th District, which basically, and you said it a while ago, is basically from Houston all the way over to Louisiana. That's my 8 counties in there. And I'll travel to D.C. and we will have committee meetings. We will mark up bills. We will meet with people coming to Washington to talk about different things, transportation, infrastructure, space, science, technology, all the things that we've, border issues. And we'll spend the week up there. And then normally on Thursdays or Fridays, I will fly back. And we'll spend either a long, maybe a 3-day period in the district, or we might have a district week. A lot of folks say, "Oh, those congressmen go home and play golf." No, I don't even play golf.
Yeah,
I used to. I don't anymore. But we're traveling. We're like today. I just traveled down here to Deer Park from Woodville, Texas. That's about close to a 2-hour drive to get across my district. And so we're meeting with people. We're getting ready to go out on the Port of Houston on the
in museum tonight.
We're going to be on the pilot boat.
Oh, okay.
And we'll be checking things out at the busiest port in the country. That's I'm proud to be representing that.
Yep.
Or we may be going out to Ellington Field to see some of our military operations, or to Johnson Space Center. And I'm proud to say that I'm now the chairman of the Science, Space, and Technology Committee. So that's added a lot to our portfolio. There's always something going on.
Yeah.
And in my past life, I've been a lot of different things. One of them was a merchant seaman.
Yeah.
So I think that fits right into representing the busiest port in the country, the Port of Houston. I've also been a janitor. I've been a guitar player. I've been a postal worker. I worked for the Texas Parks and Wildlife Department, truck driver. I've done a lot of things coming up and trying to get through school.
Well, that life as a congressman in this district especially keeps you really, really busy. And you touched on something. We'll talk about science, space, and technology chairmanship in a second, but I want to start with the Transportation and Infrastructure Committee.
Right.
Now, you're a member of that committee, which if for this region, if you've got your congressman, in the busiest port in the country, if you've got your congressman on the Transportation and Infrastructure Committee, and then, oh, by the way, the same region includes NASA and Johnson Space Center, and he chairs the Science, Space, and Technology Committee, well, you got an ace in the hole.
That's right.
I'm going to start with transportation because it has become very near and dear to my heart with the work that we do at the Economic Alliance. We're trying to make it a region that is competitive, that you can move goods and people in and out of this region competitively with other parts of Texas, other parts of Louisiana, Mexico, Asia, wherever. We want to be the location of choice for making products and moving products. So what I know you've done a lot of work with us and supported us on a lot of things in this region. What's your kind of vision for transportation, freight transportation in and out of the Port of Houston region here?
Well, as the most senior Texan, Democrat or Republican, on the Transportation and Infrastructure Committee, this is something that I really, really take seriously. Our water projects, our seaports, our waterways, our navigation, air traffic, roads, pipelines. We have jurisdiction over all of that on what we call the T&I Committee, Transportation and Infrastructure. And we work with the port. We work with the folks that are in that, in aviation or in rails or trucking, you name it. We work with all of them. We find out what is necessary to keep the freight moving. We want, it says here, we want to make the port of our port region bigger, easier to work with, stronger than ever, and better. And that's what I think we've done for the last decade, and we will continue to do that. And I am so proud to be representing the busiest port in the country right now. Yeah. And a lot of folks don't understand, well, here's, our waterway out there is 52 miles long. And just a little history. I think history always helps. In 1900, the biggest port we had was Galveston, Texas. That was the biggest port we had in the state of Texas. The worst maritime natural disaster in history, in American history, was the 1900 storm in Galveston.
Pretty much wiped them out.
Killed 5,000 or 6,000 people down there, and it wiped them out. Galveston was down and out for a long time, but there were some smart folks right up here in Houston that decided, well, if we dredge out this 52-mile long channel, maybe we can do something there. And so that's what happened, and the rest is history.
Yeah.
Now here we are, the busiest port in the entire country,
Yep.
And quite frankly, it is ripping and roaring, and it is growing. It's busting through at its seams.
It really
And
is.
we're just looking at some expansion. Hopefully, a new terminal, maybe one of these days, quick.
Yeah, we in fact, I'll reference our committee meeting again. We just heard from Port of Houston in our committee meeting, and some of the projects that they're working with you on. So I know that they appreciate that support.
Right.
I tell people, Port of Houston, a lot of people don't realize it's 52 miles long out past the far buoy,
Right.
all the way into the turning basin. And people look at it and they're like, well, Galveston Bay is pretty big, and everything. I tell everybody, look, it's a 12-foot bay with a 45-foot ditch cut through the middle of it, and we got to run all those ships in and out of there, and all those barges in and out of there every day.
Right.
So we really appreciate your support on that. It keeps us competitive. It keeps this engine that accounts for almost 20% of the state's GDP right here in this footprint. It keeps it moving. So we appreciate your support.
There's no question, without the Port of Houston, this state would not be near where it is economically, nor would the entire country.
Absolutely.
Our fuels come out of here, our automobiles, manufacturing products coming from all over the world, in and out of here.
Yep.
And we want to make sure that we facilitate that and make it as easy as possible to happen.
Well, let's jump over to the Science, Space, and Technology Committee, which you are now chairman of. I'll start with this. What excites you most about America's future in space? A lot going on right now.
A lot going on. And, sadly, we had 12 men walk on the moon.
Yep.
And, but it's been almost 60 years. And so it's high time that we go back to the moon. And it's national security that we get to the moon before the Chinese do. The Communist Party of China has their goal is to get to the moon before we do. And a lot of folks don't think, they don't know what's going on up on the moon. They think it's green cheese. They think the man in the moon's up there. We've actually got billions of tons of water ice on the moon since strategic locations, usually at the poles. And we're still finding out, where some of this is. We got rare earth minerals up there. We've got helium-3. We've got a ton of stuff. The next time we go to the moon, and we're hoping it's going to be really soon, like in 2028, that we will have not just put footprints on the moon like we did when Gene Cernan was the last man on the moon, when he hopped back up in the capsule and they launched, he and Dr. Schmidt, they left footprints. This time we want a sustained presence. We want habitat on the moon. We want to start mining. We want to bring stuff that we can use that we don't have enough of on this earth from the moon. Mm-hmm. And we know that if we're not first, that we don't make the rules of the road. If the Chinese get there first, our astronauts could get there and see a no trespassing sign written in Mandarin. And we don't want that to happen. So that's why it's critical that our biggest goal, and me as the chairman of the SST committee, is to beat the Chinese, make sure that we stay on our timetable to get back to the moon. And I had the very great privilege of meeting with the Artemis II crew just the other day in Washington, D.C., and these are the ones that are going to be going back to the moon. And we've got some great astronauts, and they train right here at Johnson Space Center in our district. And so it's critical that in fact, it is national security
it really
that
is.
We get back first.
With the all fronts war that we're basically at with China,
right?
Whether it's everything from technology to science and even agriculture, everything. It's imperative that we stay sharp and stay ahead. I'll put a quick plug in, and you probably know him in the room, but I recently read Senator Tom Cotton's book on seven things you can't ask about China, and it was eye opening, right? So what y'all are doing in SST committee is really critical to keep us ahead of the game.
Well, if you'll remember, back during the last Trump administration, they closed the Chinese consulate right here in Houston, Texas,
I do
because
remember that.
There was some really shady things going on out at Johnson Space Center.
Yeah.
And of course, the Chinese were very indignant. Well, I don't think you're doing this. This is not fair. And yet we got videos showing them they had burn barrels where the Chinese consulate staff were burning materials and papers in the yard outside.
Yeah, and I don't want to go too far down a rabbit hole. And people think that it sounds far fetched. It sounds like conspiracy theory. But if you educate yourself and really kind of dive into what is going on with that government and that economy versus ours, and in all phases of our kind of American life, if you will.
Right.
It's a direct challenge to what we're trying to do here in America, and we have to begin to realize it and talk about it. And again, what y'all are doing there in your committee is kind of one of the fronts that we're fighting on. So we appreciate.
There's no question about it. And the Chinese society under the Chinese CCP, the Chinese Communist Party, is the most surveilled, most spied upon population of people in the entire world. And that's something that, our Constitution guarantees us free speech, freedom to gather, freedom to worship, you name it, all of that. And we don't want any infringement on that. And we saw a lot of that over the last 4 years of this Biden administration. And we don't want a repeat of what the Chinese are doing up to their population.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. Let's move forward here. So, and you touched on this a little bit with your schedule. But how do you stay connected with your people here in the district amid all of the demands in Washington? You talked a little bit about how busy you get when you get a week back in the district, but how do you stay connected with the folks here in the district?
We talk, and when they talk, I listen. We have folks that open emails, open letters, answer the telephones in Washington, D.C., as well as staff members in our big district here. And we really have some great staffers. I'm going to brag on them because we do things for our constituents. We've actually helped them. I can't remember how much it is offhand, but we've actually helped people get hundreds of millions of dollars back from the Internal Revenue Service, from the Social Security Administration, from the VA, you name it, a lot of IRS. We help a lot of constituents, and I'm real proud of my staff. And
I've heard some of those stories as well. I know people can call your staff and lay out a problem, and they go right to work on it. So
that's
I appreciate that as well. So good deal. All right. So what's one piece of legislation that you might currently be working on that you wish more people knew about?
We've got to get a NASA authorization bill passed.
Okay.
And we also have to have a commercial space bill passed. I'm very fortunate because to represent this region, they don't call Houston Space City for nothing. Mm-hmm. We literally have dozens and dozens and dozens of fledgling just set up, and some of them been around a long time. Some of them just set up space companies doing amazing things. Yep. We've got a space company right here that has put 2 landers on the moon, a private company, the first one in history to ever do that. And Intuitive Machines, that happens to be the name of it. But we have dozens of other companies that do the same thing. We have one, it's not in my district, but it's in Austin. They put a lander on the moon. That was Firefly. And we've got some great things going on in public-private partnerships with private companies, and NASA or other government agencies are going to be the wave of the future, and it's going to pave the way for many, many other things that our SST committee has jurisdiction over. Artificial intelligence, fusion, quantum computing, as well as space.
Supporting that innovation and that development of technology is really a good use of federal funds.
Amen.
I always tell people, look, we want to spend money where we make money. We want to support industries and technology and innovation where it continues to better our resources, our technology, our economy.
That's right.
And that's what you're doing there. So that's spot on.
Okay.
Yes, sir. All right, so I am looking at our clock. We're getting very close to the end. So I'll end with this because I wanted to ask this question. I love what you've done. You talk about your grandkids, and I know that's a big part of your life. So what message do you hope that the younger generations will take away about public service and civic duty? What's your message to the next generation out there?
This is what I think American kids need to be taught. They need to be taught about their Lord Jesus Christ. They need to be told morals, whether it's Christian or some other religion. They need to be taught right and wrong, but they need to be taught to give back to their community. They need to be taught to leave their community, their workplace, their environment better off than when they found it. That is the key to citizenship. Yep. That is the key to it. It should be what our education, our schools. It should be what we're teaching our kids to do, to join in, whether you wear a uniform to serve in the military or serve as a firefighter or a police officer, or whether you vote. What's really appalling to me is that an enormous percentage of Americans never vote.
Yeah.
They don't have a say in the choice of their leaders.
Yeah.
And so do your civic duty and find out who the good candidates are. And that's the key to good government. Mm-hmm. Back in the old days, America's about to celebrate their 250th anniversary. And, even back in the day when we had a lot of folks that were illiterate, that didn't even know how to read, buddy, they knew who their leaders were. Yep. They followed what was going on, even if they just had to make an X for their name. And so our kids need to be educated in what's right, what's good, to keep our beautiful country, the shining city on a hill that Reagan described. Mm-hmm. Because no other country in the history of this world has ever been the example for freedom, liberty, and prosperity that America has shown. I don't care. You can go back to ancient Rome, the Greeks, the British Empire, Napoleon, the Mongols, you name it. You're never going to, Alexander the Great, you're not going to find anybody that benefited the common man like America has in our Constitution and our way of life. Our free enterprise system, our Constitution that guarantees these rights, and this is what kids they've got to learn. Serve your country, wear a uniform, volunteer in your community, run for office, run for elective office. Yeah. This is what I've served on my school board. I've served as a mayor, as a city councilman. Join in your church. Yeah. Your churches are there to help. Before we had all this welfare system and nanny state stuff, guess who helped the poor folks? Sure. It was the churches. Yeah. And share with others. That's what you need to do. Well, and don't have the government ram that kind of stuff down your throat. Yeah. Because the government is famous for playing with other people's money and giving other people's money away instead of theirs.
Well, in the great state, the great nation that we have won't remain that way if we don't have another generation that is dedicated to service, like you mentioned, and wants to. What I think you made two great points. One is leave this nation better than you came into it.
That's right.
You contribute to the positive progression of our country, and then the other thing is to serve. I think you talked about your dad a little bit when we first started, and I know you know my father. I've got a great example of someone who demonstrated service, right? And you're the same way, and then you have done that for your children and now your grandchildren. But step up and serve your community, and then with an attitude of leaving it better than you got it.
Absolutely.
Right? And those are two great messages for our young people these days. And examples go a long way. You're doing a great job of serving and being an example. So we appreciate that.
Thank you, Chad. And you are too. And your daddy was too. And my dad, both of us were raised right. Yeah. We had good moms and dads, and that's another thing that this country's got to have. We got to have marriages. Yeah. Kids need both parents at home, and that's what our tax system. The federal government has gotten to the point where we reward bad behavior and we punish good behavior. If you work hard and provide for your family and your community, your tax more so than the folks that don't.
We don't need to incentivize, and this is my statement. It's social welfare. We don't need to incentivize behavior that destroys the family.
Amen.
Because the family is what raises children, young men and young women to be good citizens.
That's right.
So, well, with that, we'll wrap it up. I want to say thank you again to Congressman Babin, good friend of ours, good friend of the district. We really appreciate your service and support, and we'll be seeing you soon, either here in the district or up in D.C., continuing to kind of work all the issues that make this region prosperous. So we thank you for that. And with that, we'll sign off from the Gulf Coast Growth Show, and we'll see you next time. Thanks again.